Hi, everybody. This is Natalie Diaz with Miss Lauren Dean Oak of the famous Oak Tribe, with the acorn on her wrist, if you ever saw her in the street.
Yes.
I want to be an oak.
You'd be surprised how many people ask what the acorn's for, and I say to them, from oak trees, and they look at me like I have 10 heads.
Yeah. But if it was syrup,
then
they would know that it was a maple.
Maple.
But then they would know that.
Yeah.
They don't connect acorns with oak.
Yeah.
They don't. Nobody knows. We don't know. We're not botanists.
Nope.
We were out that day of botany school.
I missed it. I was absent. I cut school that day.
I never want to go to botany school. Do you garden?
I do.
I see the thing. This summer, you went wild.
Yeah. We went a little overboard.
Why'd you say this year we're gonna plant everything? Did you plant last year too?
We plant every year, but I usually do it and then it kind of dwindles out towards the end of the summer. But Dan got involved this year and he was bored and he was home half the summer, definitely being sick. And so he needed something to do that wasn't watching TV and eating. So he built all these raised garden beds and overplanted. He was suffocating the eggplants because there were so many plants. And I kept saying, I think that's too many. I think 12 zucchini plants are just a little bit much, maybe 2 next year. And he, at the end of the year, he said, you were right. It was too many.
But your zucchinis were impressive, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Dan grows an impressive zucchini.
Oh, yeah. Large.
That's why you're married for so long. It's because of that green thumb. Hello. So he decided to take over the garden this year, and you did have an overwhelming bounty.
Yes.
Did you do any of the zucchini flowers like old school Italian?
No, Lisa wanted me to do it, and I never got around to it.
Next year you have to.
I need to learn how to do that. But we had a ton of flowers out of there. I could have totally done it.
Well, the thing is that I believe the flower, if you get rid of the flower, you don't get a zucchini, you get one or the other. Is that true?
Well, there's flowers that are male and flowers that are female, and you have to figure out which ones are what. So
no,
there's a process.
There's science involved.
Too much.
Forget this.
Yeah.
So wait, for those of you who don't know, as a nice Italian girl, don't be fooled by my last name. The zucchini flower would be the coveted part of growing a zucchini, and then you would stuff them, and then you would fry them.
Yes,
they are the jam.
I'm gonna try it next year.
Did you grow tomatoes?
Yes.
Did you have fried green tomatoes?
No, we didn't. We got a lot of cherry tomatoes, and he even did the yellow ones.
The long ones?
No. Just little a ton. When I say cereal bowls filled every morning with cherry tomatoes, and I kind of the plum tomatoes and the bigger ones. Yeah. And they didn't really take off the last year. So I'm hoping
cherry tomatoes are grape tomatoes are where it's at for me.
Yeah. They're little, I don't know. There were yellow ones and then there were red ones.
I love that.
Wow. And we did peppers too. We did green and red peppers and jalapenos and lettuce. The lettuce didn't take off well because he didn't know what he was doing with that. And we did 3 different types of string beans. We did Japanese eggplant and no one liked it. 6 plants of Japanese eggplant and no one liked it.
I love Japanese eggplant, but I'm laughing at the listeners right now. I'm saying, what's happening? I thought I was listening to a twin parenting podcast. We're both parents of twins. So that's where it stops and starts. But today I want Lauren to meet Amy Jones.
Okay.
Now, funny about Amy. Okay, before we were going to do this podcast, I was scheduled to do it. And then she texts me and she's like, we have a blackout. And I said, okay, we'll reschedule. Relax. She's like, we had a windstorm. We lost power. And I'm like, relax. It's okay. And she's like, no. She's like, I never have childcare. And today I have childcare. And I thought that this was such a twin mom thing. Let's get this over with. And I'm like, I don't want to have a guest that's let's get this over with.
I know that feeling. Everything lined up, but then something catastrophe happens.
Oh, so that's what I was like, we could reschedule for another day, don't panic. And none of our guests are paid. So they're all actual guests of the podcast. And so I'm like, I could be super flexible. Like if you're going to be generous with your time, I'll tape on a weekend. I really don't care. If you're going to like tell me your story and you think that your story is going to help people, then I want to hear it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So today it's an interesting, this was probably one of my most interesting guests that I've ever had on the podcast. And I'm going to tell you why. Her story is not uncommon. However, the way that she reacted is uncommon.
Okay.
So the title of this podcast at this time that me and you were taping this is The Worst Journey to the Best Outcome. So I don't want to like do like big spoilers because I want you to hear the episode. And it's funny that like, I don't want to give spoilers of a podcast, but I will tell you, her story is wild, Lauren.
Oh,
it's
really?
Crazy. It's really, really weird. And I will say super traumatic.
Aw.
And as I'm listening to this and she's telling me these things that are like, I don't even know how to like describe, like they're so horrible and they're sad. And the babies, I will tell you, everybody's fine. So like, I'll tell you, like everybody's good. She's good. Babies are good. Husband's good. Everybody is doing good.
Good.
So that's the first thing.
I like a warning that it's a happy ending.
Yes, it is because it's to the best outcome.
Yes.
But it's the way that she handled everything along the way. And I want to say that a good reason that she was able to handle things so well is because she is a nurse herself.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I think that because she was comfortable in the hospital situation and she had total faith in her care team and just really believed in the process, that she was able to have an experience that was positive and uplifting, where you guys and Lauren might hear it as like, oh my gosh, poor Amy. What are we going to do? Like, let's go rescue Amy. I love Amy so much. I'm going to tell you, Amy is totally fine.
Okay.
She handled this so healthfully. What would that word be? Healthy, handled this, whatever. I have lost all control of the English language. But I want you to listen to this. And the takeaway is that usually I will say, and I'm going to give you the warning that if you like, it's trigger warning.
Okay.
Like if you're triggered by preterm labor, then definitely, like I'm not saying don't listen to this. She actually went pretty far considering. Another TTTS family.
Oh, okay. Well, it's common. It does happen.
It does happen, but I'm telling you, there's something like this season, we're seeing this more. We're seeing more preterm labor. And I'm trying to figure out if it is that A, there actually is more preterm labor, or B, that people with preterm labor are just finding me. I can't actually tell. I wish that there was like...
I bet it's a little bit of both.
I'm telling you, Lauren, there's something up, man.
Well, also, they found that when people were on lockdown during the pandemic, that people weren't going into preterm labor as much because they were home. They weren't like people are now out in the world and they're moving around more and they're going to the office and they're going to the grocery store and trying to live a life. So it might be a little bit of that too. They're back at it.
She also, another parent, a spare, has an older daughter.
Okay.
So I don't know. There's just something. I'm like, do I call the CDC? Like, who do I tell if I notice a trend in twins? I feel like we're the only people who are going to give a crap, right? Like, am I in a position where I see things that other people don't because I only work in the twin world?
Isn't there like a national organization of obstetrics? Maybe you can email them.
I can. ACOG.
Yeah, you
the
could say,
American
notice this
Academy
trend. Why don't you
metrics.
do a little study on that?
Nobody's going to care. Nobody's got money. Everybody's going to be like, what do you want to give us $50 million to do this? And I'll be like, yeah, okay, never mind. Let's scratch that. I don't even
know. Maybe you could do the research.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's going to happen because now I'm going to go for a grant. I would love to. I would love to figure this out because I'm telling you, this is like something's going on, guys. I'm seeing more preterm labor, and maybe it is like Lauren said that people were in lockdown and now they're like being shot out of a cannon.
Yes.
So that could be. And so the babies are going to be a year soon.
Okay.
And they're having a lumberjack themed birthday party,
Oh.
which I think is very, very sweet. But I want you to meet Amy and I want you to listen to her story. And I want you to, instead of getting upset by the stories, I want you to just realize how healthy she is and how she handled this. And that's going to be the takeaway that I want you to have.
I love that. I love an aspirational story.
All right. Are you ready to meet Amy?
Yes.
All right, guys. Here is Miss Amy Jones. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Nat.
Oh, Amy, they're going to be one soon.
I know. I feel like the first birthday is such a big milestone.
It is. Do you have a theme planned?
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know what to call it. It's kind of like lumberjack, like woodsy type theme. One wild year is the banner. So very fitting.
And it has been one to be like a classic like podcast host, and it has been one wild year. So I love the way that you're framing your whole first year story as, you know, a bad journey to an unbelievably wonderful experience. So this road to the 1 year lumberjack birthday hasn't been the smoothest. Shall we say?
No.
Say
yeah,
that gently?
I would agree.
And out of all the birth stories that I have ever heard, this one is definitely a doozy because it's confusing.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm dying for you to tell our family just like what the story is. So tell us about like when you found out that it was 2 the first time. So go from there. And I'm going to sit here and eat my popcorn.
Sounds good.
I wish I had real popcorn.
Yes, the big moment. I kind of had a feeling. I know some people kind of have a feeling. I kind of had that feeling going in. I had an early ultrasound at 6 weeks. And I was having some bleeding, and I was basically went in really anxious that something was wrong, kind of was my thought. Of course, I was by myself. And, you know, she was taking a long time and getting me to hold my breath and all these weird things in my head. I'm like, there's either no babies or there's 2 babies. Like, I just kind of had that feeling. And she goes, have you been having a lot of morning sickness? And I'm like, why would she ask me that? And she showed me the screen and she's like, oh, here's 1 baby, 1 heartbeat. And I was just like, oh, relief. And she goes, I think there's another one over here. And I was just like, what? But I think it was obviously a little bit of a shock, but I was like, just really happy and excited. Like, I thought that my appointment might have had a worse outcome. So I was just like kind of thrilled, you know?
Yeah. Aw. So now you find out that there's 2 and it is definitely a relief. And I love that you said that you're expecting it. I love how so many twin parents like have a hunch. And I don't know. I wonder if singletons have a hunch that it's twins and then it's not. I always wonder about that, but you had your hunch and I love that.
I think because my husband was always like 2 and we're done. And because we have an older one, and I was like, I think that's the only way I'm going to get 3 is if I have twins. So I think that's why I was kind of hoping for it a little bit, you know? And I got what I wanted. So
I love that. So now when did things start getting a little sticky during your pregnancy?
Yeah, well, honestly, the next day, I remember kind of going down that rabbit hole of like twin strollers and twin carriers and how do we take care of twins? And what are we going to do with twins? I don't know what to do with twins. And then the following day, because they initially thought they were MOMO, mono twins. And my doctor telling me that and quickly going back to Google and figuring out what that meant and kind of going from, oh my God, what are we going to do with twins to what if we don't have these twins? And that was like the mindset changed just from the get-go even.
It is. So for those of you that don't know, MOMO is basically, I always think of the uno, right? So like the MOMO, it's the 1 placenta, it's the 1 sac. It is the riskiest of all of the twin pregnancies. You definitely get identicals from that. So it's a single egg that's split, and it's the way that it splits that basically made this happen. But with that, when you have one placenta, there's a whole slew of things that could happen that would only happen to us, right? Because one baby typically doesn't have to share a placenta. But when you have two babies that share a placenta, there's an issue called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. And then there's another issue called TAPS. There may be a few other things that are thrown in there too that raise your chances. But we know here at Twiniversity, when I'm teaching Twiniversity classes, right, and I have like students, we always say like, who are you? Where are you from? What type of twins are you having? And I know that if I have like 8 people that have MOMO twins, I'm like automatically, okay, statistically, I'm worried about some of them already.
Yeah.
So when your doctor told you that, okay, it is MOMO twins, you went and you looked it up, and then you saw that this was a higher risk. Like, when did you push for more doctor's visits, or was your doctor on top of it the whole time?
Yeah. At that point, it was so early on. It was kind of like, we just have to have an ultrasound again in a few weeks and go from there. Kind of was like the initial thing. Like, they immediately referred me to an OB. I know in Canada, it's a bit different. Like, typically for a healthy pregnancy Singleton, you would just see like your family doctor. So they referred me to an OB. And luckily at that next appointment, they actually found that they were Modi twins. So they had the same placenta, but they were in their own sacs. And, you know, I knew there was obviously still the risk of the twin to twin, but we were relieved that it was a lot less risky at that time.
Yes. Well, because like they're two spacemen, right? So the thing is, if they're in one sac, they could get tangled in their cords, and then you could have cord compression, and then we have heart rate issues. So when they're in their own little homes, they could fight less, but still there's only one refrigerator. So there's still, you know, issues that happen to that. So you find out that now we're Modi, they have their own little homes. Did you breathe a sigh of relief then?
I did. That was like a big relief for me. And I was kind of like, I knew there were still risks, but I was like, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And it was kind of smooth sailing for a while. I really was like enjoying my pregnancy. I love being pregnant. I loved, you know, I was showing so early. I loved like surprising people and telling them it was twins. Like, it was so fun.
So when you went back to the doctor for a follow-up ultrasound, what was the week that they were like, okay, we need to pay attention to this? Because TTTS has different stages. So it just goes from 1 to 4, right? There's no stage.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
I don't know.
Don't quote me on that.
There might be a stage 5, but I'm not. Yeah, I don't know either.
So when did you go that they said, okay, like, Amy, it really looks like it might be stage 1? What week was that?
I think I had an initial like big growth anatomy scan. I think it was between 18 to 20 weeks. And originally the radiologist didn't catch it. And my OB was actually the one who was like, something looks up, there's too much fluid, and I'm going to send this to a bigger city, to the MFMs, essentially. And that's when things escalated really quickly. It went from them calling me being like, how soon can you get here? To pack a bag because you might need surgery. And we were kind of like, we just had no idea like what we were in for at that point. But yeah, it was I think it was 20 weeks. We went to Vancouver, and on our first ultrasound, we were diagnosed with stage 1, twin to twin.
Okay. And yes. And so I literally looked, there is 5 stages, but unfortunately the 5th stage is already past the point of
that's what
salvation.
I kind of thought.
So that's why I knew of only the 4, because 4, we could still do things. God forbid, you know, we still have parents that get that done. So now, you know that you have stage 1. How did we go to the next step?
Yeah. So that was like you're saying, like, obviously it gets a lot worse. But just all the information that came with, you have stage 1, this is what this means, this is what could happen, we don't know what's going to happen, was a lot to take in. At that point, they were like, we're going to monitor you. There is a chance that it can resolve from stage 1. So we kind of had to turn our lives upside down. We relocated to a bigger city, left my home and everything behind. And yeah, we were just monitored really closely. I think maybe twice a week ultrasounds at that point. And just trying to figure things out.
Yeah. Now with TTTS, and maybe you could answer this for me, is there like, I know that there's obviously a danger stage, and you could go from stage 1 to stage 4 in 24 hours. It could be such a quick turnaround. Is there a time in your pregnancy that you could get past that you're like, okay, now I could take a breath and I feel calm? Or like, is there like a danger zone?
I know it's more common for it to happen like earlier in the pregnancy. Like I know when it reoccurred later on, I think I was 26 weeks.
Okay.
And they kind of said the later in pregnancy you get, the less likely it is. Like past, I forget what they say, past 28 weeks, it's kind of like unheard of that it would like reoccur or like show up suddenly. So I think it's pretty typical, like early in your second trimester is like when it comes up from what I've kind of seen. So when they talked about potentially needing the laser surgery, if it went to stage 2, it was a little bit unnerving because there was a risk with the surgery that if it goes poorly, you would lose your babies. And so in my mind, I wanted to get as far along as I could. So if something went wrong, they could deliver the babies and try to save them that way. Yeah. That was kind of like what I was holding out hope for at that point.
So when did you get to the stage that intervention really needed to occur?
Yeah. So for quite a few weeks, it was just monitoring, we kind of held our breath every appointment and we'd go in and things look stable. That's kind of all we hoped for. One day further. Eventually things started to resolve. I think it was about 25 weeks where they were like, okay, you actually technically don't even have twin to twin right now.
Yeah.
And the fluid levels were normal. Everything was looking good with the babies. They talked about even sending me home at some point, kind of decreased the monitoring a little bit. And looking back, I'm kind of like, I should have maybe listened to my gut because over that week, I think I had some symptoms of twin to twin, but I just didn't really put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
I even went into urgent care because I thought I was going to go into early labor. At that point, my cervix was shortening and I was having lots of tightenings. And they were like, no, you're not going into labor. They didn't do an ultrasound. They just did NSTs and babies looked okay. But when I went back for my appointment a few days later, we were at stage 3, twin to twin. So things had changed, like you said, really drastically, really quickly.
It's with TTTS, it's funny because obviously in this universe that I've lived in for now, 17 years with my old twins, but I remember meeting my first twin mom that had twin to twin and had to have fetal surgery and go through all that. And then I remember that I think it was last year. No, it was 2020. 2020, I remember that Netflix came out with a show. Did you watch that?
I haven't actually watched a lot about it.
So there's a show called The Surgeon's Cut. Now, I weirdly am going to tell you something that it's an unknown fact about Natalie Diaz. I love watching surgeries. I don't know why. I have since I'm young. There used to be a show on the Discovery Channel that was just called Operation. That's all that it was. And it would be like, today we're doing a knee replacement. And today we're going to like whatever it was. And I would be like, yes, it's something I've never been disgusted by. And so when this show came out, I was absolutely thrilled that I believe it's the first episode. Yeah, it's the first episode. The first episode, it is called Saving Life Before Birth. And it highlights TTTS. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah,
for somebody to talk about this on like a national Netflix scale.
Yeah. Because you don't know about it unless you like our community, essentially, right? It doesn't happen to anybody else unless you're having twins.
No, you would never really know about it. So I was so happy that I'd be like, okay, good. And it was such an enlightening episode, but I am sure that it is not something that you ever thought would be the position that you would be in.
No, not in a million years. Like you hear something like fetal surgery and you're just like, what? Like that sounds terrifying. Don't know what that is.
Yeah, because you basically, you just went from like being so excited about your pregnancy and like being like, yes, it's twins, blah, blah, blah. And then like lickety split. Now you have to have these discussions and the potential risks and, dangers that go along with this. How how did you handle that? Like getting to like the point of like no return and knowing that things have to get done. And how did your family handle it?
Yeah, it was definitely hard. I think, I had a healthy singleton pregnancy, so I also know what that is like.
Mhm.
And you're not often discussing with your doctors the mortality of your unborn children. Like that's just not, you just have a baby and they're going to be born and it's great. They don't tell you about the statistics of them even surviving or having a disability. It's just like, that's not something that you talk about. And that was like the normal essentially at that point. I kind of had to, I obviously had a lot of anxiety about it. And I kind of had to have a little mantra that I told myself, if I was going into appointments. I just used to tell myself, like, these babies are meant to be. And the thing with twin to twin is like, they don't know the cause. There's nothing you can do about it. It's so out of your hands. And so I just tried to focus on like what I could do, which wasn't much. Maybe I could drink water and get enough protein and like get some rest. Like that's all I could do. And everything else was kind of out of my hands.
Yeah.
Of course, when I went into that appointment, I was alone again. Just the situation was tough on our family because this was in our hometown. We were staying at Ronald McDonald house at the time. I had family watching my toddler so she could be with me. My husband was back home at work. So it was definitely stressful.
I could imagine.
But, yeah.
That's so great that you had the opportunity to stay at the Ronald McDonald house. It makes me feel less guilty about French fries. I have to say there's not a trip that I take. Yeah, we've had many, many, many Twiniversity families that have had the very extraordinary privilege of being able to stay there. That's one less thing to think about, one less hotel that you need to book and meal to make.
Would have done without it.
Oh, they're so absolutely unbelievable. So now what week was it that they were like, okay, we're going to do this and here's what the plan is. And how did they even
it was 26 weeks. They sat me down and said, cause at that point I got so good at reading ultrasounds. I knew what was going on before they even talked to me. I just thought it was stage 2. Like I didn't know. So they told me it was stage 3. I was kind of shocked. They gave me my options of what we were going to do. I was obviously going to do the surgery. And at that point, the silver lining was they were at that viable age. And if something went wrong, we're going to move to an emergency C-section. And that was kind of our plan.
Okay.
So they did the surgery. They gave me the steroids to help with their lungs. And they did the surgery the next morning. My husband luckily made it there and we went in together and did the surgery.
And so for the surgery, you're awake. You're just
I was awake
through the whole thing. And then they perform this. Is it a local anesthetic? What exactly
they give you some local. They did give me a little bit of sedation because I remember at that point, I was huge. Like they ended up taking off almost 4 liters of excess amniotic fluid. So to lay down flat on the table was like, I started panicking. I was like, I don't think I can, because you have to sit still, obviously, for this surgery. So they gave me a little sedation and then I was like, okay. But they put a screen above you so you can actually watch in real time the surgery, which was just insane. I remember at one point we saw, because they're in the sack with the baby, and we saw the little toes, baby B's little toes on camera, which is just, you see your babies on ultrasound all the time, but to see their real toes and their skin was just like, what? Like just wild.
Oh my gosh. So when you saw them and you see this, were you able to stay in that moment where you're looking at them? Or were you still panicking about like, is this doctor going to do the right thing? Is this?
I wasn't anxious in the moment. I think maybe it was a little bit of the drugs, but I was kind of just like, I was like, I'm in good hands and it's out of my hands. And my only job is to just lay still. And that's all I can do, really. And my husband was right up on my face. Like we just kind of talked to each other the whole time. And
So now it was during the surgery. What happened exactly that you went from MOMO to MODI back to MOMO?
So I know the surgery it was a little bit more complicated than they had thought originally. And I remember them kind of talking as I was coming out of the surgery, like amongst themselves, and kind of overhearing a little bit, but not really knowing. I was kind of out of it. And they kind of told me afterwards of the surgery, like the surgery was successful. Where they needed to laser, like the connections in the placenta, was close to their dividing membrane.
Okay.
But they kind of had to, if they didn't get those spots, then it wouldn't have resolved the twin to twin, or it would have left one of the babies with not enough placenta.
Okay.
So that was kind of their only option. And it wasn't until the next day they did an ultrasound that they confirmed that unfortunately, the dividing membrane had been punctured, and then the babies just ripped through it, and now they're in the same sac. So now they are mono twins.
Oh, so they fought to basically get to each other with the help of the doctor. They wanted to just be next to each other.
They just had to be all up in there. Yeah.
So now you go through the rest of your pregnancy. You make it to 32 weeks, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, for like a Singleton pregnancy to say you delivered at 32 weeks, it would panic people. We're just like, yeah, man, 32 weeks is extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my goal. My goal all along, I was like, I just want to make it to 28 weeks. I knew that was like a big milestone in like survival rates and stuff. So we were just trying to make it closer and closer. They almost delivered a few days after the surgery because they were having some issues. And luckily they resolved that. Like, it's amazing what these babies resolved on their own. The other thing was too, actually, when we were stage 3 twin to twin, they had reversed roles, which apparently is quite rare. Like one of the twin doctors was like, had never seen it.
So explain to the family what you mean by that.
Yeah. So basically with twin to twin, one is a donor and one is the recipient. And the donor is essentially giving the other twin a blood transfusion. So they're like low on blood, low on fluid, and the other one is overloaded. So that's how it was for many weeks. And then they switched roles. So now the one that had too little had too much, and vice versa. Just to make things more complicated, essentially.
That's the way that they love to do it. So on your 32nd week, you were hospitalized or still staying at the Ronald McDonald house?
Yeah, I was hospitalized from the surgery on.
Okay.
So I was an inpatient for 6 weeks because of the mono twins. They needed to monitor them really closely. I knew there was a big risk of cord entanglement. At that point, the hospital kind of became my safe place. You know, obviously it's not fun to live in the hospital, and to only see my daughter for a couple hours a day was hard. But I felt reassured if I woke up in the middle of the night and I hadn't felt them moving, that the nurses would come and check on them, and I know that they were okay.
Yeah. I mean, what a relief that is. I mean, it's the double-edged sword, right? That's just the way most hospitals are. And you had the added challenge of having your little chick at home. So now when you get to 32, right? What was you made it to 32 weeks one day.
Yeah.
And what was the deciding factor that we're like, nope, we're delivering today?
Yeah. So the plan was always to deliver at 32 weeks. They didn't want me to go past 32 weeks because the risks with MOMO twins just go up a lot. But they were kind of like, doesn't have to be on the day, kind of like in this 32 week mark kind of thing, within a week I guess. And for a couple of days, like, we had my planned C-section, we were all good to go. And then, you know, some emergency triplets were born the night before, and I'd get bumped back a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Triplets were always bumping us. So I was like, these darn triplets. But yeah, I was getting to the point where I could almost relax, you know, I could almost be like, okay, we made it. But then I was scared of something going wrong at the very end. So I was really anxious about it. They did some extra monitoring, extra ultrasounds, and, you know, everything was just looking good with the babies. Yeah. So they were like, things are stable. We'll plan for in a couple of days was kind of the plan. But yeah, at that 32 week and 1 day mark, I was having more tightenings. I kind of thought I was going into early labor. Okay. But nothing was really changing. They were kind of just watching me. And yeah, later that day in the evening, you know, I ate dinner and just Braxton Hicks type things like that I was always having. And then I was like, are these getting a little more uncomfortable type of thing? And I remember it was almost shift change. And I was like, oh, I don't want to, I'm the kind of person, I'm a nurse. I'm like, I don't want to bug the nurses. I'll just wait till after shift change, you know? And then I was like, no, maybe I'll walk out to the desk and I'll just ask for some Tylenol, you know, like, God, like looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I think I need some Tylenol. I'm like, actually, I think I'm going to pass out. And, you know, we go back to my room and she's like, blood pressure is fine. Like, do you want me to check the babies? And I was like, sure. Like, so casual at this point. And then, yeah, they were having problems getting one of the babies, and one had a decel. Basically, they were going into distress, and yeah, things were picking up fast. All of a sudden, there's lots of people in my room, and in my mind, I knew there was a high risk of having an emergency C-section all along. So in my mind, I'm like, I've played this out. This isn't like, you know, I'm prepared for this. Call my husband to come over. And, you know, I'm just like trying to be quiet, follow directions. You know, it's an emergency situation. I know how these things work. And it wasn't until I saw they were literally running me on the stretcher to the OR. And I saw my husband standing in the hallway, like just deer in headlights. And I was like, oh, that's when it kind of hit me, like, you know, what was happening.
Well, you probably were in work mode too. Like when you're when you're surrounded by everybody in scrubs, there's got to be a piece of you that defaults to they got this, because you know that you would have this.
Everything that they're shouting to each other and give her sprays of nitro and this and that. I'm like, I know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So I know I was very aware of what was going on.
So the babies are here. How big were they when they were born?
They were around 3.5 and 4.5 pounds.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So 3.5 and 4.5, which easily you could tell who's who when there's this pound differential.
Yeah.
How long did they stay in the NICU?
Well, I guess I should say there's like a little piece in there where, so I go for my emergency C-section. They have to put me out because they didn't have time. So when I wake up from my C-section, you know, I'm like in recovery or something of the sort. And I realized my mom's standing there crying. And to me, I'm like, why is my mom's not here? Like, how is my mom here? Type of thing. Because my mom wasn't even in the city. And I came to, and I realized, you know, she's telling me the babies are okay. The babies are okay. And I'm like, immediately like, thank God, like that's all I cared about.
Yes.
And then I realized I like can't talk and I'm intubated and I'm like so confused.
Yeah.
And they told me the story of what happened after they put me out.
Which is, oh my gosh, hold on. Wait, hold on. Hold that story. We have to take a break and we're going to come right back because I'm sitting here like, yes, I told you I was eating my fake popcorn.
Eat your popcorn.
All right. Sit right there, guys. We'll be right back. Okay. I can't take it anymore. Okay. Literally fastest break ever.
Okay. So this is what I've been told secondhand, obviously. They put me out because they didn't have time to give me a spinal because the babies were not doing well. Because I had just eaten, when they put me out, I aspirated. So I vomited and aspirated. We all know that's a risk with surgery. And they weren't able to intubate me because of that. So they were trying again and again to get an airway. They couldn't. They ended up eventually getting an airway in the front of my neck. And that's how they saved my life. They had to start CPR because my heart stopped. Meanwhile, they started the surgery to get the babies out. They think I had a placental abruption because I hemorrhaged massively. They had to do a massive transfusion. And yeah, I was really unstable that first night. I know they ended up getting me as stable as possible, transfer me to a different hospital, to an ICU where they could look after me. And even that first night, I know when my anesthetist talked to my husband, he said he wasn't very positive about what the outcome was going to be. They really didn't know if I was going to even survive or if I was going to fully recover because my brain and everything had been without oxygen for such a long period of time. And
Jeez,
yeah, so I woke up and it was like 24 hours later and I was like, what?
Oh
happened.
God, Amy.
Wasn't expecting that.
Why, Amy? Why all the drama, Amy? Did you not have
I'm like,
enough during your
I know. I'm
pregnancy?
like worried about the babies the whole time. It never crossed my mind that like something would happen to me. Like
Oh
that
my
wasn't really on the
gosh.
agenda.
I can't, Amy. I
Yeah.
can't take this. Listen,
Yeah.
the crazy part is that don't you think that it's fascinating that all of that happened to you and you're like,
Mhm.
here I am. Let me tell you, some
Yeah.
things. Do you think that it's because you have a medical background that you're just like crap happens? This is things that happen and this is why things can be good. And this is
like, I just feel like, what else do you do? I mean, the thing is, it's been a year. I've spent a lot of time processing it. You know, I've gone through a lot of different feelings about everything that happened. You know,
yeah.
initially you're just like, you literally have a second chance at life.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I really was like, oh my gosh, my kids almost like grew up without a mom, you know? And, you know, I think it's still okay to like have hard moments and grieve everything that we lost and all the trauma my family went through. And, you know, when I look back on those first few days of my baby's life, I couldn't meet them for a few days. I was like consciously intubated. It felt like torture. You know, like there's a lot of dark memories, but I try and just find peace in my story because this is our story and there's no changing it, you know? And I think you have to try and find power in your story too, which I guess is why I'm sharing it now.
Yeah. There's a lot of power in that story. I mean, I don't even know where it started. Like I could think that it's, you know, even rolling the dice on having a second kid, you know, and then finding out that it was two. I mean, there's so much in there. And the fact that you could be hopeful and positive and matter of fact about it. And like, this is our story. There are people, Amy, that literally are shaking still years later and that don't realize that there is a process. That's another thing that you're like totally winning at, is that you realize that when things happen, there's a process and that's trauma, and trauma needs to be recovered from. And it is very difficult for people, especially when they're new parents of twins, to even figure out how the heck do you start a process of recovery. So did you have a system? Did you have a support system, or did you have knowledge of somebody else that experienced trauma like this? How did you begin the process to say, okay, I'm going to be okay with this. Here's how I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Another great thing when I was pregnant too, I was also seeing some midwives. They were back in my hometown, but they stayed connected with me the whole time. And they were very, like checked in with me, but they were very always asking me how I was feeling and about my like mental state with everything being so high risk. And they, you know, I think it was around the point when I had the surgery was like, maybe I should talk to somebody. Like, this seems like a lot. And so I started going to counseling then. So I kind of already had that process started. So then just kind of added that in and just continued with therapy. So I think that was really helpful. And just having family and friends to talk to it. Because you're right. When you're busy with twins, you might be able to push it down and, you know, not think about it, but it'll come up in those quiet moments anyways, you know?
No, I'm literally going to tell you, truth be told, for all the birth trauma that I had personally, which I rarely talk about on Twiniversity, but I'm going to say it's only been maybe a year and a half that I've gotten therapy. And so what I went through, and even though I'm sitting here, clearly I talked to a bazillion parents and I'm like, tell me, let me help you. I never once thought about like me and how I'm going to fix, like, how could I fix me? Never really thinking that I knew it was traumatic. Like, you know, that there's trauma that occurs, but I never thought about like, you know, quote unquote, processing it. I just was like, that's what it is. And it pops up in so many ways. And people don't realize it. It pops up with arguments with your spouse or at a red light when somebody's not moving fast enough. Like there's things that happen if you don't follow the kind of proper guidelines to making sure that your brain absorbed what exactly just happened.
Yeah, because your body's still in fight or flight mode,
Yeah.
essentially, right? Yeah, and things can totally trigger you. I remember my therapist saying, like, it's not every day, if you had something traumatic, like a car accident happening to you, you're not walking around the grocery store and somebody's stopping you to say, oh, you're so lucky you got in that car accident, or, that kind of thing. And that's the thing with birth trauma. It's so entwined in all the joy and the happy memories, and the best thing that happened to you was also the worst thing that happened to you. And how do you make sense of that? I think, even like the pregnancy and postpartum and the birth and the newborn stage, like, I think those are such like sacred times to a mom. Like, it's something you might only experience once or twice. So to have it tainted is like, it's hard.
Yeah. It really is. How did your husband process this?
Yeah, I feel for him, because in a way I feel like him and my family was more traumatized by everything than I was, because I wasn't awake, and he had to go into NICU dad mode and handle the babies on his own for days. And, he's definitely like the rock to us. He's not an emotional guy. And I remember when they finally let him into ICU to see me because of COVID, only one person a day could come and see me in ICU, and they made an exception for him. And I just remember him sobbing at my bedside. And I just remember, like, I hadn't seen him cry in 10 years that I've been with him. And I was like, oh, this is a big deal. Like, it was like, holy. But I think just having like open communication about it, you have to talk about it.
You really do have to talk about it. And I think that our boys don't necessarily do that enough. So if that's another thing that pops up with them too. And I'm like, guys, come on. So like, all our big daddy-os, they don't get it. They feel like they always have to be the rock, but you have to talk about it. Even if you talk about it just so that your partners know you're not crazy. Right. Could we talk about this so that I'm not the only one who thinks that this was traumatic, right? Because
you're the only one that really knows. Yeah.
Right. Like, you're like, was I there for this? Did we have the same experience? So it's so important that you both figure out ways to process it. But it's so tough when now you have your babies in the NICU and you still have to go eventually get to them, and you have to recover for yourself. And now you have to go take care of these kids. How many days were you in the ICU?
It was about 3 days. 3 days, I think. It was really amazing. They finally were able to extubate me on that last day and got me transferred back to that hospital and reunited with my babies in the same day. And that was like so amazing. That's all I wanted. Yeah. Like, when I woke up, I think everybody was still worried about me. And I was like, of course I was writing notes because I couldn't talk. And I was like, I'm fine. Like, I'm going to be fine. Like, I just need to be with my babies. Like, that's all I needed.
Well, they're your medicine. For a new mom, I mean, they're literally your medicine. Your children will heal you. They'll help, your uterus contract and all the wonderful things that happen with that. Now, with everything that you went through, because they were so little, were the doctors and nurses looking at you like, hey, Amy, when you get a chance, we'd love some breast milk? Like, did they even approach that?
Yeah, actually, one of the first things they asked me when I woke up in ICU was, do you want a pump? And I was like, yes, get me a pump now. Because I had prepared for preemies. I knew they were going to be 32 weekers. I had planned to pump like as soon as I woke up. I breastfed my first. I was really like hoping that was in our future for the twins. And so, in ICU, I was pumping every few hours. It was really hard because I was intubated. I had this tube. I couldn't look down. My sister, shout out to my sister, she came in every few hours all night long, helped me pump, expressed milk for me. Good. We would get like 0.1 mil and be like so proud of it. And they would take those syringes and they'd transfer it to the other hospital to give it to the babies, like crazy. I was rigid about pumping. And then when I finally got back to them, I started on some medication to help my supply, and was eventually able to breastfeed them. Now we're going strong almost a year later, which is amazing to me. It feels like a big accomplishment.
Well, look, when we say that we're having a lumberjack birthday, I mean, this is like for realsies. This is some crazy, crazy stuff here. Amy, like you've been
Yeah.
through, there's so many stories in your story. It's amazing. Because I could even
I
just make
know.
the story of talking about having a singleton and twins, right? Because that alone is
Yeah.
fascinating to have two different types
Yeah.
of pregnancies and deliveries. And obviously that
Mhm.
one was a little bit, more special than or different
Sure.
than the initial. When you finally all got reunited and then got discharged,
Mhm.
this was, I would say, weeks later. How long was it till everybody was home?
They spent 41 days in the NICU. So I think not long before their due date, maybe a week or two. It was just before Christmas, which was nice. We got to be home for Christmas. And because I was in another city after the first couple weeks, my daughter, my husband, everybody went back home. So it was kind of just me and the babies in NICU for a long time. They were doing well. Like, they're like amazing little fighters. Like, they did like a day of CPAP, and then otherwise it was just feeding and growing, which was nice in NICU. I was kind of prepared for it to be more scary, but they did so well, which is a relief. And then finally, I'm trying to think, like maybe, I guess it was a month, and in that NICU, we got transferred back, medevaced back to our hospital, and they got to see Dad again. And yeah, then eventually we all got back home together before Christmas.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Mhm.
Best Christmas present ever.
That's what I said. I was like, my tree's not up. Nothing's wrapped. I don't care. It was just like these little babies and our family together is like all I needed.
Was your daughter absolutely over the moon when these little babies came in the house?
It was kind of nice because the hospital we were at was a women's hospital, and they let siblings come into the NICU. Okay. So she actually got to meet her little baby brothers in the NICU and see them through the isolates. She was not quite 2 at that point. So she was a little baby herself, but yeah, when we brought them home, she was just so lovey with her little brothers, and, just wanted to get her hands all over them, essentially.
Oh my gosh. How do you handle all this, Amy? I mean, and for the record, for those of you that are listening, you guys don't even know that Amy has like a blackout right now in her home. We're texting each other to try to figure out what we're going to do. And you're like, it's no big deal. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, my texts are like, Amy, I will change anything for you. It's okay.
I'm like, don't worry about it.
And you're like, nah, it's all right. We'll go to my in-laws. How do you roll with it? Like, where do you get your strength from in order to just keep moving forward positively?
You're in survival mode. Like, that's the thing. It's just, and I think you have to realize, like, maybe all you did today was feed your babies and get everybody changed and dressed. And like, that's enough, like that is a lot. You just take it one day at a time. And I mean, it hasn't always been easy. Like, a year later, you can kind of take a breath and be like, oh, okay, they sleep, and, I feel like myself again. But the 3-4 month mark, I was like, this is really hard. And the sleep deprivation with twins, I was like, how does anybody do that? Like, this will make you crazy. So it's just a process. You just have to get through it.
Well, you were doing an absolutely magnificent job. And definitely one of the craziest birth stories. I mean, we get some doozies here at Twiniversity. I think
that's the thing is, like, after all of it, I was like, I just want to find somebody that's like, oh, that happened to me too. I just feel like, maybe somebody can relate to me in like a small way. Maybe a small part of the story,
that will happen. I am a bazillion% positive. So we've had such a crazy experience of finding needles in haystacks, right? I feel like that's what we do. I remember, like, when we first started, I had a legally blind expectant mom of twins, and she was like, I would really love to speak to somebody. And I'm like, oh, let me see what I could do. But like Amy, I'm telling you, within 48 hours, we found somebody to match her up with. They were on different coasts. But that is what we do. I mean, if you don't put your story out there, nobody will know that you have a match.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
And I think you need some community when you have multiples, because unless you know a twin mom, like, people don't get it, right? Yeah. Like, you need somebody who's like, I know what you're going through.
Did you think that this is what it was going to be like to have twins. Like now that the dust is settled and you had a Singleton and you had her for a while before your pregnancy occurred. Like, did you think that it was going to be this, I don't want to use the word chaotic, but like wonderfully
That's
chaotic.
the word that came to my mind.
It is, but it's always like, I feel like chaos has kind of like a negative connotation where chaos should not, I wish that there was like a happy chaotic word. Maybe there is, and I'm just.
I say it's like cute chaos. You know, it is chaos, and everywhere we go, it's just like little house wreckers. Like, you know, trying to get out the door is like, you know, very difficult. But you know, then they have the moments where, you know, their sister makes one of them laugh, and then the other one just cracks up just hearing the other one laugh, even though he doesn't know what's going on, and they're just like, it's just a room full of giggles, and it's just like. These are the moments, you know, when they give you the big sloppy kisses and call you mama. And it's just like, oh, this is what we went through all of that for. Like, it's so worth it, obviously.
It is. It is so worth it. And I'm so glad that you could realize that. And I'm so excited for you that you're only at the beginning of the awesomeness. I mean, now it's just going to keep getting better and better. And everyone who sees us that's like, oh my God, I don't know how you do it. Whatever, we just ignore those people because we really know what the truth is. And the truth is that it's so much fun to have that chaos. Oh,
yeah, totally.
I love it. Now, what would be if you had to say for everybody that's out there listening in the universe, if you're like, this is my best twin mom hack.
Twin mom hack. Ooh, that's hard. I feel like there's so many little ones. I would say, especially in the early days or in the hardest days, get out of the house when you can. And maybe not every day, but you know, if you're going to struggle at home, you might as well go struggle somewhere else just for a change of scenery. And then when you come home, then you feel happy and relieved to be at home. If we had to go somewhere in the morning, we have all our outfits laid out. We have our diaper bags packed, you know, that kind of stuff. Make your life easier however you can.
Yes, getting outside is an underutilized therapy.
Yeah.
And it's very, very affordable for everyone. It's true.
Yeah.
It's shocking sometimes. I'll speak to moms and I'll be like, when was the last time you left? She's like, I don't know, 5 days ago. Like, could you go out today? Could we just go out for 10 minutes? That's
just go to the grocery store. I don't know. Do something.
That's all right. Just go sit in front of the house. Like, just get out, get some sun on your face. And not through a window. That's all.
Yeah.
My goodness. Amy, I know that we will find, I'm not even going to say it's one. I feel like there's going to be quite a few people who have walked in your shoes, if not similar. And the good news is that if you're listening, guys, and you're like, yes, tell Amy I totally get it. You could tell her yourself. You could email us at twiniversity@community.com, or you could email us on any social platform. We're just at Twiniversity everywhere. But like, Amy, honestly, thank you so much for playing with me today. I'm so excited.
Thanks for talking to me. It was really cool.
I can't believe that you decided to abandon your blackout house to hang out with me. But this was so cool. Thank you for hanging out with me. I really am. I'm so excited. I can't wait to watch everybody grow up and the more joys and the more giggles. And it's going to be so great. So thanks so much, Amy.
Me too.
So for those of you out there, just know, if you need anything from us, you know that we're here. And don't forget, if you are alone and you need to connect, every single month, we have our Twiniversity membership meeting that will meet on the second Tuesday of the month at this time. And please come and join us. Just go to twiniversity.com/memberships for full details. But the goal is for us to connect with each other. It's nice that we have our podcast. It's great that we have, great articles and some Facebook groups, but nothing beats a Zoom where you bring a cup of coffee and we just commiserate over whatever the heck we want to. So please make sure that you join us. And thanks again for listening, everybody. I will see you later on.